Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ria. I'm a compulsive overeater and bulimic. Just to let you know, I'm recording audio only and only when I'm speaking. So your anonymity is protected. Nobody will see you on video and nobody will hear any of your shares or any questions that you have. Okay, so today we are talking about step two. So before we jump into step two, let's just do a quick review of step one, which we talked about last month. So step one is we were powerless over alcohol or food, dash that our lives had become unmanageable. So we established that if we were true compulsive overeaters or addicts, we basically at some point lost the power of choice over our ability to take in certain substances, and our lives were unmanageable, not as the result of our compulsive overeating. Our lives were already unmanageable, but we used food to try to manage our lives. So that said, we ended up in a lot of trouble because as addicts, if we introduce a certain substance into our system, we are no longer able to stop when we want, or I should say, I can't stop when I want to. I can't stop comfortably. I can't stop when I want to, and I can't stay stopped comfortably. So if that's the case, what am I going to do? Because if I have this allergy to food and I have a brain that keeps telling me that I don't have an allergy to food, I'm going to keep repeating the same thing over and over again. So it says in the big book that on page 43 that our defense must come from a higher power. Okay, so basically what they're saying in step two is we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Okay, so what does that mean? A power greater than ourselves. So when they wrote this book in the late 30s, Bill and the first 100 were a little nervous about throwing the word God in there right away because the God word scared people. And initially when Bill started going around helping people, he was leading with the spiritual part because he had had this big spiritual experience. So he's going to these alcoholics in bars and saying, hey, guess what? I found God. And they're like, I'm good. Thanks. You know, like I found God in this bottle. I don't need any spirituality. Thank you so much. And so he went to Dr. Silkworth, and Dr. Silkworth was like, no. You're going about this wrong. Your sales pitch is backwards. You need to sell them on the problem and then give them the solution. If you lead with the solution, if they haven't bought, there's a problem, they're going to have no interest in what you have to say. So the idea here with step two is not that we are coming to believe because, you know, we love God, but because we don't have a choice. If I live in the depths of addiction and I'm struggling to get out of it, they're saying that you're not going to get out of it out of your own power. You're going to have to, a power greater than you is going to have to pull you out of this thing. So when I went to my very first meeting, I saw the word God on the wall and I was like, nope, just absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. So when I was a kid, I grew up, I was raised Jewish. I am Jewish now. And I had a lot of like warmth around Judaism in my family, but I went to a religious school where they had a lot of interesting messaging about God. I remember being told that as a Jew, if I walked into a church, I would turn into a pillar of salt. To the point where when I was in 5th grade, I signed up for an acting class at St. Paul's Church in Livingston, New Jersey, which was like the churchiest church you've ever seen. It was like, you know, the stones and the fleur-de-lis and the red door. It looked like all it needed was a moat and we'd be in the Middle Ages. Okay. So like I was terrified to walk into this building, but I did it because I wanted to go to this class. So the door opens and I walk through the front door like this, like, and I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I didn't turn into a pillar of salt, which was good, but also confusing because that's what I was told would happen. And, you know, that was sort of in line with these stories I heard about God that blew up cities and, you know, asked people to sacrifice their first, you know, their children. And I was just like, what? I had no idea what to do with that. The other thing that happened for me as a kid was that when I first heard about like the long history of things that had happened to Jews, and it scared me. Like the messaging I got was like, bad things happen to you when you're Jewish and God is scary. That was it. Um, and then for some reason, when I was around 12, 13, my father decided to become an Orthodox Jew, where we were not religious, but my father all of a sudden decided to become religious. And my parents spent the next 10 years fighting about it, which was, World War III in my house and very, very uncomfortable. And around the following year, I lost a classmate to cancer, another friend to AIDS. And when we went to Israel that year for my brother's bar mitzvah, we lost a friend in a terror attack in a bus bombing. And I decided then and there, I was 14 years old, and I said to myself, I don't not believe in God, but I want nothing to do with this God. I want nothing to do with Judaism. I will never come to Israel again. And for the rest of my life, I'm going to send God over there. We're going to be at the party. We're going to be at the same party because I can't leave. But God's going to be in that corner, and I'm going to go to that corner, and we're going to politely ignore each other forever. Because this is crazy. I had no tools to live with all these scary things that were happening. And it would have worked out fine if I hadn't, been a compulsive overeater, because within the next 10 years, I just went down. I was very lucky in that I hit a bottom very quickly. I heard about bulimia when I was 16, and within a few months, I was binging and purging 10 times a day. So, I'm a quick study. So by the time I was 22, I was at the end. I was not doing well at all. I had to move back into my parents' house. I'm not one of those high functioning addicts that can, have a career and do all those. I'm one of those people who's like, I call out sick to work and I stay home and I have no money and I don't do anything because I'm busy eating and hating myself. So, when I went to my first meeting, I remember going and hearing people use the words compulsive overeater for the first time. And I was blown away by that. And I knew that I had to keep coming back. And so for 2 years, I came back. I wasn't ready to follow instructions yet, but I knew that this was where I was supposed to be. And after 2 years of playing around and seeing where my disease would take me, and I'm not going to go into that so much because we did that last month. And let's just put it this way: all that weird shit you did with food, I did it too. Okay, we all know why we're here. And if you didn't, ask me. I'm happy to tell you about it another time. But anyway, after 2 years, I was in a meeting one night, and there were people there who had what I wanted, and it was this light bulb moment of, maybe if I do what they do, I'll have what they have. And so that was the night I got abstinent. That was March 29th, 2004. So that was 19 years ago. And except for a 3-month break where I decided to check out intuitive eating and promptly failed, I've been abstinent ever since. So part of what my sponsor at the time said was, you have to develop a relationship with a higher power. And I wasn't really so interested in that yet. I was still really focused on the weight loss, because at that point in OA, the trend was more toward like food plans and weight loss. And I will say that I had a use for it at the time, because I didn't know how to eat. I didn't know how to have meals. I just knew how to like eat all day, or starve all day and then eat all night, that kind of a thing. There was no like 3 meals, 3 square a day, So these women taught me how to eat and taught me how to track my weight and focus on that. And I had physical recovery. I got down to 120 pounds, which was for me really little, like too little, to the point where I like lost my period, et cetera, et cetera. But eventually my weight evened out. But what started to scare me was that I had everything I wanted all of a sudden. I was, I had a thin body. I was in my mid-20s, so I was cute still. And I had like really cute clothes, and I had male attention, which is what I wanted. But I found that I was more rageful and more terrified and more anxious than I had ever been at 250 pounds. And I didn't understand why. I had everything I wanted. And I wasn't eating compulsively. And I realized that I had to hit a bottom with people, also with my relationships, and realized that I was burning through people. I was using people. I was lonely all the time. I was angry. I was, just a tight ball of anxiety all the time. And I didn't understand why. And I didn't really get it until I read page 52 of the big book. This is part of We Agnostics, okay, which is the chapter we're going to be really looking at today. So on the previous page, on page 51, on the top paragraph, third line, it says, I'm sorry, second line. Confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they showed the underlying reasons why they were making heavy going of life. So they're not saying here that life is hard. They're saying that we are making our own lives hard. Why? Leaving aside the drink question, that means even when you're not drinking, okay? Let's say even as a sober person, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. And if you turn to page 52 now, second full paragraph, it says, we had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view. Notice they did not say we shouldn't apply to our drinking problem. They're talking about our human problem, okay? We were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Okay, so they're describing what my life was like as an abstinent person. This had nothing to do with food, and I didn't get that until I had physical recovery without spiritual recovery, without emotional recovery. That's when I realized that I needed a higher power in order to live, because the way I was living was not sustainable. Eventually, I would not have a choice but to go back to food. We talked about this last month. It says, Dr. Silkworth says, we were restless, irritable, and discontent unless we can again experience the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. So if you take my food away, now I'm just a restless, irritable, and discontent person. That's not sustainable. If you walk around somebody who's tense all the time, it's really difficult, but at least you can walk away from them. But if you are that tense person, you need to take the edge off eventually. And, you know, for me, even with other people, I used to say that I was like the Terminator. Remember in the Terminator where you have like those robots that look like people? They're like really attractive people. And then you like follow them because they're really good looking. And then you go into a room with them and then they like eat your face. Like that's kind of what I was with people. I would just like suck their souls out and then spit them out. And I'm like, why doesn't anyone like me? You know, I realized that I needed to find another way to live. So the cool thing about the big book and the smart thing about the big book is the people who wrote it, they know who they're dealing with, okay? They're dealing with alcoholics. They're dealing with addicts, which means that if you tell me what to do, I'm going to do the opposite and post pictures of it on Instagram, okay? So they're just making suggestions here. They're certainly not telling me that I have to do anything. What they are saying is if you want to get better, because we've already shown you that you're not going to get better by yourself. It's not going to happen. Even if, you know, tomorrow you eat something that has been a problem for you in the past and now it's not, eventually it's going to become a problem for you. And that's something else. And I will say this every time I share. If you're on the fence about whether something is a problem for you or not, it's a problem for you. If you're concerned that, you know, something might be an issue, you're not really sure, it's a problem. Okay. If it's on your mind, it's a problem. The end. So what they're saying here is not, this is God and you have to believe in God, G-O-D, God. That's not what they're saying. They're saying there has to be a power somewhere that's greater than you that is going to take care of this for you. And your job is to do these steps in order to experience and create a relationship with whatever that higher power is. They happen to use the word God, which is the same reason I use the word God, because I don't have another one. That's the word I have. If the word God bothers you, don't use it. I don't care. You can call it tricks. I don't care. You can call it Harry Potter. I really genuinely do not care. I use the word God because I don't have another word. I will tell you that because no one told me what to believe in, I had the freedom to be able to start developing a relationship, because nowhere in this book are they telling you what to believe. They're just telling you about the need to believe. They're selling you on the need for a higher power in this book. So the idea here in We Agnostics is they're not convincing you that God exists. They're convincing you that you have to let go of whatever's blocking you from considering the fact that you need a higher, whatever that ends up being for you. And when I decided I was ready to start developing a relationship with that higher power, I remember my sponsor at the time saying to me, listen, because she said to me, you know, you really have to start praying and meditating. I was like, listen, you don't understand, okay? The God of my understanding, I'm just like, no, if you knew the God that I was dealing with, you'd be like, okay, fine, you can skip this part. But no, she said, listen, if the God of your understanding is not working for you, fire that God and hire another one. And when she said that to me, I was like scandalized. I was like, you're allowed to, I wasn't even a religious person. And I was like, you're allowed to do that? And she was like, yeah, let's say for argument's sake that God, whatever God is everything, right? So if God is everything, God can be anything. So you get to decide, because it doesn't matter at the end of the day what in your brain opens that door for you. It's just that you get in there. It's just that the door opens and you're willing to take the step through, because ultimately what's happening here is you may not get a better understanding of what God is, but you're going to start opening yourself up to an experience. And once you have an experience, it doesn't matter what you believe, because you've experienced something and that's all you have to go on. You know, it's very different for me to tell you what a banana tastes like versus you eating a banana. You can take my word for it, but until you take a bite of a banana, you're not going to fully understand the experience of eating a banana. This whole thing is saying, open your mind to something. If you have like a resistance to the God idea, that makes sense for whatever reason, get rid of it. You can't afford to hold on to your prejudices about God because it will kill you. So if your God idea doesn't work, fine, throw it out, try something else. Not because we're invested in you believing. It doesn't help me if you believe in God. It helps you if you believe in God. And again, I'm not saying God like the God that you're thinking of in church or mosque or synagogue. I have no idea, because that's the truth. I've been at this for 20 years, okay? I have no clearer idea of what God is than you do. But I do know, based on my experience, that God is. And that's all I need to know, because I have that experience and I continue to cultivate that experience. And it's only because I was willing to let go of my old ideas and try something else that I had that experience. And that's what these 12 steps are about, okay? So let's talk a little bit more about we agnostics, okay? So agnostic, by the way, does not mean someone who doesn't believe in God. Agnostic means, so agno, it means doesn't know, someone who does not know what God is, or just has no experience with it. So I would say 99 to 100% of us are agnostics coming in here. Because even if we have very firm beliefs, firm religious beliefs, none of us actually know. And there may even be people who have had full-on spiritual experiences coming into this program, and yet they have not been able to apply that to their addiction. There are still certain sections of their lives or my life in which I am still agnostic. There are still pieces in which I hold on and don't give up and don't surrender. So this applies whether you're the Dalai Lama or you're like the most anti-religious person in the world. Because again, it's not about what you believe, it's about being willing to believe in something greater than you. That's it. So when people come in, and I hear people sometimes come in a lot who really have their guard up about the whole God thing. You know, atheists, agnostics, and I have nothing against that. You can, like I said, believe whatever you want to believe, as long as you're not coming in and pushing back and fighting against the idea of believing in something that's greater than you. Because otherwise you're digging your own grave. And it's very hard to explain that to people who are really invested in their position. Because a lot of us do that. We come in and we're invested in our position. And for people who have spent their lives invested in a certain position, it becomes so ingrained in their identity, it's very hard to let that go. It's very hard to let that go. But that's why they say in this book, we're only going to let it go when we realize that it's going to kill us. So, and unfortunately, sometimes people just don't want to let it go. So, you know, our pride kills us, unfortunately. Again, somebody can do these 12 steps and still be atheists. I know people who are very successful in this program who work a really hard program and they don't believe in God, but they do believe that a power greater than themselves is working in their lives. It doesn't matter. Don't get caught up in definitions. Don't get caught up in concepts or religious ideas. It doesn't matter. Just be willing to open yourself to something bigger than you. Is everybody clear with me? Are we good? Yeah? Okay, fine. So on page 46, middle paragraph, it says, let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God, okay? So in other words, you may not even believe anything. You may not even want to believe anything. It's not about that. It's about being willing to believe. And after my sponsor at the time said to me, you know, maybe you should fire that God and hire another one. She said, go pray. And I was like, I don't even know who I'm praying to. She's like, I don't care. Go do it. So I went down to the beach and I looked up at the sky and I said, hi, I don't even know if you're there, but my sponsor says I'm supposed to do this. So I'm doing it. Okay, thanks. Bye. Like that was like my really deep, holy spiritual experience. You know what I mean? But it started there because I was willing. That was literally just me being willing to do something else. There is a speaker I really like. His name is Sandy Beach. If you haven't listened to him, get off this meeting and go listen to him after because he's awesome. He has since passed away, but he talked about how when he first got into AA, he was talking to his sponsor and his sponsor said to him, so do you pray? And he's like, no. Do you read any meditation books or, any, theology, anything like that? No. Do you meditate? Do you have, quiet time every day? Nope. Sponsor says, well, how's it going? Because that's the bottom line. I don't need to convince you of anything. Your life should be evidence enough that you need help, that you need a higher power. And I'm telling you, for me, it was not until after I got abstinent that it became obvious. For a lot of us, we get lost in this idea that once I get abstinent, once I lose weight, once I get the physical recovery, once my health resolves, once I feel better, once this, it's all going to be okay. And precisely when we get all those things is when we go, oh shit. Because then we realize that that's not the case at all. Page 47, bottom of page 46. Okay, much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. And I want to be very clear about that. Even if you are a religious person, you still get to make your own rules here. You still get to decide. Our own conception, by the way, that's what makes me a really bad Jew, because there are a lot of things that I'm supposed to believe that I'm like, no. But that's what keeps me in my religion. I chose it later after this, but my point is I get to engage. I get to make the rules in this relationship. It's very nice. I get to draw the boundaries of my relationship, how I engage. But once I do that, I have to follow directions. We'll get to that in the next step, but I get to decide what's comfortable for me in this relationship and how it starts. Okay. So much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him. Remember, this is the entire point. They say that in this book. The point of this book is not to help us stop drinking or stop eating or get thin or find our prince or princess charming or make $1 million. Nowhere in this book does it say that, okay? Or get your own reality show, whatever it is, okay? The point of this book is to have a spiritual experience, to develop a relationship with your higher power. Now, again, when I came, I was not interested in that. I was interested in looking good. Literally, that was it. The problem was when I finally did look good, I was miserable all the time to the point where I couldn't even be in my own skin. That's how I understood what they were talking about. Because if you take the alcohol or the food away, we have no other way to live. I'm going to say this 1,000 times in 100 different ways. So maybe one of the times it'll get in there. That's usually how it works. But that's the point. We have to make the approach and effect a contact, okay, with him. If you don't like the word him, they're using it because we don't have pronouns for God because God is beyond our conception, okay? Our brains are this and God is this. We cannot understand what it is. If you don't like the word him, don't use it. Use the word her, use the word they, use the word it, use the word what. I don't care. Don't get caught up in semantics. I know people have called me and they're like, well, we don't like the patriarchal tone of the big book. I don't like the way they use the word refer to God. I'm like, okay, you're allowed to not like it. Don't let it stop you from doing what they say. Okay. You don't like the word him referring to God? Don't use it. It doesn't matter. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new power and direction. So remember, they said that our dilemma was a lack of power, right? The fact of the matter is that people who are addicted have an allergy, right? We're allergic to whatever substance. So in and of itself, not a big deal. I'm allergic to down feathers, right? So if you give me a down pillow to sleep on, I start coughing, I wake up, I put the pillow in my closet and I go back to sleep. I don't wake up in the middle of the night and go, maybe this time if I use a down pillow, I won't start coughing. Okay, that in and of itself, not an issue. The issue is when I keep telling myself that I don't have a problem. So I can't fix my thinking with my thinking because my thinking is broken. So there has to be a power greater than me that's going to help me. So it said before, lack of power, that was our dilemma. Now they're telling us that when we open ourselves up to a creative intelligence, now we're being infused with power and direction. All of a sudden, we're getting the solution to our problem, provided we took other simple steps. And they're talking about the other 12, by the way. We found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. Remember, you don't like the word God, throw it out. You don't like the word him, throw it out. The idea is all we have to do is be willing and open, and it happens. Because the only obstacle between us and a relationship with our higher power is us. Because God's there already. It's there. It's happening. It is. We're already in it. It's just a question of being open to it. To us, the realm of the spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all men and women and children and trans people and whoever wants to have a relationship. It's available. It's done. All you have to do is be willing. When, therefore, we speak to you of God, this is page 47, we mean your own conception of God. Okay? I will say something, though, that some people may not like, but that's okay because I'm used to that. Sometimes people say, my higher power is the doorknob or the lamp in the meeting. If that's your starting point, excellent. But if 5 years down the road, that's still your higher power, we have to talk. Because a doorknob is lovely, but the only thing it's going to do is open a door. You still have to walk through it and go somewhere else. So if you're still at the doorknob, it's time to move forward. Do you hear what I'm saying? Does this make sense? Okay. Once we engage in that relationship, it's naturally going to evolve. It's just like any friendship, if people who have been married a long time, like the marriage you had when you first got married is not the marriage you have. I'm married for 16 years. Okay. The marriage I had when I was 25 is not the marriage I have now at 41. These relationships evolve and change and you see them differently. Whatever your starting point is, that's fine, but it should not stay your conception. And I will tell you that for myself, I didn't really know what it was in the beginning. And then as I started working through the steps, nothing in my conception changed, but my reality and my experience changed to the point where after I did my 7th step, I sat in meditation and I knew just like I know that you're all there on the other side of my screen right now, I knew that God was in that room. I knew that I was in God's world and that everything fundamentally all the time is okay. It's always been good. It is good and it will always be good forever. And that was all I knew. But I knew that I was in God's presence. To this day, I still cannot tell you what God is. I have no idea. But I do know that I've experienced God. And that experience is very different than the, hi, I don't know if you're there kind of it evolves. But we need a starting point. We just need to be willing to open our minds. That's all they're saying here. They're not saying believe this. They're saying look at the evidence. Your life is a shambles. So like, if you want to have a better life, if you want to learn how to live without living in addiction, open your mind to living under the direction of a higher power. Okay. Yeah, we understand. We're good. Okay, fine. Right now it's 10:30. I think I started, how long ago did I start, Susie? Where are we on time?
You got 21 minutes to go.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much. Okay. So do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. So later on in this chapter, yeah, I'm gonna go down to this in a second. Prejudice, right? Prejudice is preconceived ideas. So sometimes we're stopped by our own preconceived ideas about religion, about religious people, about God, about spirituality. Sometimes we think that we have to be at some level of perfection in order to like earn our place in the club. You know, I have to be meditating 40 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening, and I have to be giving charity, and I have to be like tending to the sick in Calcutta, and I have to be, you know, like the terms are, if you want it, you're in the club. You know, that whole like, what was it, the Marx Brothers? Like I wouldn't be in any club that would have me as a member. Like this is like the opposite of that. Like you don't have to do anything. You're already in the club. All you have to do is just walk in. So let's go down to the bottom of page 47. Okay, so besides a seeming inability to accept much on faith, we often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. Many of us have been so touchy that even casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. This sort of thinking has to be abandoned, okay? So again, this is all about being stuck in our own ideas and conceptions. Like I said, my father became religious when I was 15. So I had beef with religious Jews. I wanted nothing to do with them. I thought they were closed-minded. I thought they were judgmental. I thought they were judging me. You know, mind you, I was judging them. Like, just to be clear on them. I also had the same closed mind. I was looking at them and saying, well, if being spiritual is being like that, I don't want a part of it. Meanwhile, I was like, you know, killing myself with food, but at least I wasn't going to be like those crazy people in Brooklyn. You know what I mean? But if I wanted to get better, I was going to have to abandon that thinking. I had to if I was going to survive. Faced with alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open-minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions. In this respect, alcohol was a great persuader. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. I love that. It's like, well, you can either consider spirituality or die a horrible death. You decide. And ironically, a lot of us are like, well, how bad would that death be? Like, how long would it take? Like, would it be really bad? Would it be so painful? Like, if I could buy another 20 uncomfortable years, I'd rather that than have to, like, you know, become spiritual. Like, oh my God. But faced with alcoholic destruction, a lot of us eventually are, you know, wrangled into doing what we're supposed to do. Okay. So now is one of my favorite paragraphs that I'm going to take you to. This is page 49, okay? I'm sorry, bottom of page 48, and then we're going to go to the middle of page 49, okay? Bottom. The prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speed. This is not a science lesson. I'm just reading what they said here, okay? These tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and these laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. We have no reason to doubt it. When, however, the perfectly logical assumption is suggested that underneath the material world and life as we see it, there is an all-powerful guiding and creative intelligence, right there our perverse streak comes to the surface. And we laboriously set out to convince ourselves it isn't so. We read wordy books and indulge in windy arguments, thinking we believe this universe needs no God to explain it. Were our contentions true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere. Okay, so I don't know about you guys, but I spent plenty of times in like smoky coffee houses in college trying to explain, like, you know, there's no need for God. There's no need. I just didn't, not because I really was so invested in that outcome, but because I didn't want there to be a world with a God in it. Because if so, I didn't really like how he was running things. It's not fair. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to deal with what that responsibility meant if there was a God in this world. So it's just easier to not have to think about it. Okay? Instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, we agnostics and atheists chose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and end of all. Rather vain of us, wasn't it? So I happen to love this sentence, okay? So most of us have basically run our lives saying, all right, listen, especially if you grew up in America, I got this, okay? All you got to do is pull yourself up by the bootstraps, get your coffee, and get your life going. And if somebody gets in your way, you just bulldoze them. You know, you just get it done. Go make it happen. Nike, just do it. Just do the thing. And if it doesn't work, then you try even harder and you try even harder and you don't give up and you become a Disney princess and you beat all the odds and you do what you have to do. And you just make it happen. And if you don't make it happen, you're a failure. That's basically life, okay? It's your life. You make it happen. You decide your destiny. You got this. Okay. And we grow up with this this narrative that we tell ourselves. We are the directors of our own fate. But that's not what they say here. They say that we should be considering ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation. So what does that mean? An agent is someone who carries out a mission for a higher authority. So this is my favorite, one of my favorite examples. And if you've worked with me as a sponsor, you've heard it, but too bad, you're going to have to hear it again. Okay, so I don't know how old some of you are, but there was a show in the 70s called Charlie's Angels. There was also a remake in the movies in the 90s called Charlie's Angels. I'm going to assume that you all have at least a little bit of experience with this, but basically the concept of the show was there were these three very cute like spy agents. And at the beginning of every episode or movie, they would gather around this little speaker and a male voice would come out and say, "Hey, angels." And they'd be like, "Hey, Charlie." And Charlie was the boss. And Charlie would give them their mission and off they would go and do their mission. Okay. They were the agents and Charlie was the boss. Now, what happened? What would that show be like if the angels were like, "Yeah, whatever, Charlie, we know what we're doing." And they just like went and did their own thing. That show would have gotten canceled like after one episode because it would be chaos. Like the whole thing was that they have a job and then they go do it. But the problem is we are all angels, but we think that we're Charlie. And when Charlie talks to us, we ignore him and we go do what we want. And then we wonder why our lives are so crazy. The idea here is that God has an ever-advancing creation. An ever-advancing creation means that from the beginning, from let's say the Big Bang, right? There has been something happening. There has been a constant process of life evolving that started as soon as life started. And we are part of that plan. We are part of that whole system happening in whatever way that we can and we could never understand where our place is in this whole thing. Our job is not to understand it. Our job is to find out where we fit in that plan and then do our job. Not come up with the cosmos and figure out how everything works and then do what we want to do. You know, if you're driving on a highway and everyone's driving in one direction, but you want to go in the other direction, you're going to have a problem. You're not going to get where you want to go. The idea here is to let go of the idea that we're Charlie and remember that we're angels and that we're supposed to be doing Charlie's mission, not our mission, so that we can be part of something greater and live in peace instead of conflict with everything and everyone around us, including ourselves. That's what this is about. When we live in conflict with ourselves and with everybody else, when we're trying to wrestle what we want out of life, when we're trying to be Charlie instead of be angel, we're in constant discomfort. We are restless, irritable, and discontent. And when we're restless, irritable, and discontent, how do we fix it? We eat compulsively. And then we could kick off the addiction, and then it all starts again. That's where the need for a higher power comes in. Not because we are, you know, these naturally spiritual people, although many of us are. Carl Jung said that addicts are actually people who have a deep and driving thirst for God in a way that civilians don't have. So that's why it's the only solution for us. And that's why we get to such desperate places, because we're so thirsty for that spirituality, or hungry, you could say. So the idea here is that we want to open ourselves up to the possibility that there is a higher power working for us, and learn to work with that higher power, which is the idea is that we're going to let go of everything that's blocking us, initially with our concept, any concept that blocks us. And then going through the rest of the 12 steps, we're going to get rid of all the stories we tell ourselves about how life works, who we are, how things went for us, so that we can open ourselves up to what actually is. Because at the end of the day, if we want to be free, we have to live in reality. We have to live in the truth. And living in a world where we're the boss is not the truth, because it's impossible to have a world where everybody's the boss. It's just not. I mean, look at the, you know, I've just read this great book. It's not OA approved literature, but it's a novel about Achilles. And it talks about how during the Trojan War, you had all these different kingdoms and how they had to fight together. And the Grecian kingdoms had to fight together against Troy, but they had problems because all the different kingdoms were run by different kings who didn't want to fight underneath any of the other kings. So basically, they couldn't get it together because this one didn't want to work under this one and this one. That's life. That's what we do all the time. Well, I don't want him to tell me what to do, even though he's my boss. I have way better ideas than he has. Like, Thank you. Thank you for your feedback. Like, this is what we do. We create chaos in our own lives. We let fear and anger and resentment and all these things overwhelm us to the point where we can't function, and then we eat. If we want to be free, we have to be willing to open our minds to a power, to an agent, excuse me, to a director that's greater than us. That's what they're saying here. Okay? Okay, bottom of page 49. We who have traveled this dubious path beg you to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. So like I said, I was raised Jewish. I walked away for a long time. And then despite myself, I came kicking and screaming back to Judaism, and now I'm an Orthodox Jew. Okay? No one would ever believe me if I told them that, including me. But it is what it is. But I could only get there after I let go of all the concepts and ideas that I had about Orthodox Judaism, and then made my own rules when I became an Orthodox Jew. That's not to say that you need to join a religious body if you don't want to. I know plenty of people who have very strong spiritual lives who are not affiliated with any religious group, and that's totally fine if it does it for you. It just happened to be that that's something that resonated with me in my identity, so that's what I do. But the point is, if that is something that speaks to you, don't let old ideas block you from going there, because you can really find amazing community and really special people who can also walk this path with you. And it can be very rewarding. So again, don't let your own ideas block you from opening yourself up to something really great. We've learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, and for sure they all have them, those faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. People of faith have a logical idea of what life is all about. Actually, we used to have no reasonable conception whatever. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices, when we might have observed that many spiritually minded persons of all races, colors, and creeds were demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness, which we should have sought ourselves. So I'll just say it. I never wanted to be a religious person because religious people aren't cool. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be edgy. I wanted to be hip. I wanted to be smart. I didn't want to be religious. Like, the only cool religious person is like the Dalai Lama. Like, and he's only cool because he just kind of does his own thing and like is very open and, flowy. He's not telling me what to do. He's just like, be compassionate. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. But, I just want to be cool. I want to be liked. I want to be hip. I want to be blah. I want me to be this, and I want my life to be this. Well, who said that this was about what I wanted? Who said that? Where did I get this idea that life was supposed to be about what I think it should be and who I'm supposed to be? Maybe I'm just supposed to take directions. I don't like that. I'm an addict. I don't want to take directions. I want what I want when I want it. So instead, we looked at the human defects, this is top of page 50, of these people, and sometimes use their shortcomings as a basis of wholesale condemnation. That's what I told you about before, how I would look at religious people and say, like, well, I don't want to be like them. They're all, critical and closed-minded and judgmental. Meanwhile, I'm saying every single religious person is that. Like, there couldn't possibly be like a normal, healthy, open-minded religious person on this planet. We talked of intolerance when we were intolerant ourselves. We missed the reality and the beauty of the forest because we were diverted by the ugliness of some of its trees. We never gave the spiritual side of life a fair hearing. So I do want to address that for a minute, the ugliness of some of its trees. It is absolutely true that there are people who use spirituality and religion as weapons and who, create abusive dynamics and who have hurt people, no question. But that is not a representation of the religion, and it's not a representation of God. It's a representation of people who have taken it and warped it because of what they wanted. They thought that they were angels who thought they were Charlie too. Okay? So if you have experienced religious or spiritual abuse, I'm really, really sorry, because that sucks and it's not fair. But I beg you, please talk to people who have also gone through it, or people who can encourage you through it, because don't let it be a block to you getting well. It doesn't mean that it's right and it should have happened. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, don't let it block you from getting well. Okay? Fine. Okay, so yeah, we talked about the bedevilments on page 52, right? So that's what they're saying. They're saying, we had to ask ourselves, this is page 52 again, why we shouldn't apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view. In other words, when it comes to alcoholism or food addiction, we can say, okay, listen, yeah, I know I need help here. I know I'm not eating normally. I know I'm, dealing with, I'm either underweight or overweight or just sick all the time. I know I need help. I know I'm not doing this right. So, okay, I'm willing to eat a little differently. But it's another thing entirely when someone tells you you have to start living differently. I don't mind you telling me that I need to eat 4 ounces of whatever for lunch. But you start telling me that I can't gossip anymore. I'm like, get the hell out of here. Like, what do you mean? Everybody gossips. What are you telling me? I can't, exaggerate a little bit. Everybody exaggerates. This is what we're talking about. It's about becoming more and more aligned, not because we want to be better or even because we want to be good. It's because we want to be well. Because whenever there's a misalignment inside, whenever our insides don't match our outsides, it creates disease. It creates an imbalance inside. Every time I would lie, because I was a compulsive liar, right? Every time I would lie, it would create shame and it would create fear of getting found out. Now, I couldn't live with that roiling around in me inside all the time. So I had to eat over it. And if I wasn't eating, then I was just uncomfortable. So of course I couldn't control my emotional nature. Of course I was prey to misery and depression. I remember having friendships and feeling like I was performing for everyone around me. I just wanted you to love me. So I wasn't even a person. I was who you wanted me to be. And then I wondered why, even though I was surrounded by people, I was so lonely. And it's because nobody knew me. I wasn't actually intimate with anyone because I couldn't show them who I really was. I just wanted you to want me, which is actually really selfish. So of course I was prey to misery and depression. I couldn't make a living because I didn't want anyone to tell me what to do. And I had a feeling of uselessness. I was full of fear and I was unhappy. It's not because I was eating compulsively. It's because I was living based on my own self-propulsion. So if I want to get aligned, and if I want to get well, it's not about me fixing my thinking. Einstein said that we can't fix a problem with the same thinking that created it, right? So if my thinking, my strange mental twist is the crux of my problem with food addiction, I cannot think my way out of this one. There is nothing within my power that's going to fix this. So I need something greater than me to change my mind, to literally change my mind. Because I can't do it myself. I can even want to do it and I can even try to do it, but the results will not last. Just like I lack the power of choice when it comes to introducing certain foods into my system, I lack the power of choice when it comes to changing my mind and changing my morality and changing my perspective. I'm unable to see things from another perspective on my own. I need to be open and I need to be willing and I need something greater than me to do it for me. And that's the only way I'm going to get well. Okay, so on page 53, they eventually get to a place where they're going to call you out and they're going to say, when we became alcoholics, this is the second full paragraph, okay, it's short. When we became alcoholics, no, or we say food addicts here, crushed by a self-imposed crisis. That means we did it to ourselves, okay? We could not postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? And I'm asking you all this right now, because that's what this step is. God's either going to be everything in your life or God's going to be nothing. Because if we live in God's world, there's no terms. This is God's world. I'm going to just do it the way I can't say God's in charge of this, but I'm going to be in charge of my finances. Like God can run the world, but I'm in charge of my love life. Or God can run the world, but I really just kind of want to, do more Pilates and change my body because I think I should. It doesn't work like that. Doesn't mean I can't do Pilates, but the point is, why am I doing Pilates? What am I doing it because I believe that God is guiding me to do this movement with my body because he wants me to be healthy? Or I think I need to be cut so that I can look good on the beach this summer. It's a subtle shift in perspective, but it changes your whole life. God either is or isn't. Now, again, if you don't like the word God, throw it out. I don't care what you call it. But you eventually, and you can avoid it as long as you want. I know people who have come into program, they've been here for 20 and 30 years and they've hung around, but they've never let themselves look at this question. But at the end of the day, we're all going to have to face it if we want to get better. God either is or isn't. He's everything or he's nothing. What is it to be for you? And you don't even have to be ready and you don't even have to mean it. But I remember sitting with my sponsor and saying, I don't know if I mean this. And she's like, that's okay. I have to be willing to start to live in a world where God could be everything. Because the world that I'm living in only brought me pain. And the only way I'm willing to say, okay, fine, I'll do whatever, I have to be in enough pain to do it. So I pray for all of you that you have enough pain. That sounds horrible, but it's true. I pray for you to have enough pain and quickly to be able to say, God is everything and I want to get well. Because that's what it comes down to. We're at time?
Yep.
All right, awesome. Perfect timing. All right, so I'm going to stop the recording now. Thanks, guys.